This is HornyUncleNiner, and today we will be looking at Wizard of Legend. General information. Wizard of Legend is a roguelike dungeon crawl game with pixelated graphics. The game puts you in the shoes of a wizard taking part of the Chaos Trials, a series of dungeons used to test your mettle of being the Wizard of Legend. In order to prove your worth, you must defeat 4 bosses slinging magic and dodging various attacks. Wizard of Legend was made by a small indie team named Contingent 99, using the Unity 5 engine. The game was released in May of 2015, being published by Humble Bundle. The game was well received, having quite a few reviews on Steam with a very positive rating, and a 79 on Metacritic. The game features over 100 spells, tons of items, and procedurally generated levels. All of this can be enjoyed in single player or local co-op. Graphics and performance. Wizard of Legend offers no graphical options, but the game's pixelated graphics should run just fine on most computers. The minimum requirements are quite low. That being said, the pixel graphics look very nice. If you're a fan of pixel graphics, you will enjoy the game. While the environment and characters are pretty, where I think the game shines the brightest is the effects and animations. A few things that stood out to me was the fire and lightning, although these were the main types I used, and I feel like they were also just more flashy. All the various spells look unique from each other in their own sparkly way. During my gameplay, I was getting well over 200 frames even the most exciting moments. If you have decent specs, you shouldn't have any issues running the game. Overall, I gave graphics and performance a score of 8. Gameplay and story. The game has you start out in a museum documenting the wizard trials and letting you get a feel for the game, which is a great intro to the game as you get to learn the basics of the game at your own pace. You are then transported to the hub of the game, where you can prepare for your future dungeon runs, choosing your relic spells and cloak. After choosing your desired playstyle and setup, you dive into the dungeon, which features a total of 6 levels and 3 bosses. Which bosses you fight and which order you fight them is different every time you play, offering a slightly different experience every time you enter. On top of this, the dungeons are procedurally generated, making each of them feel just a little different yet familiar, as you visit similar rooms. The enemies you fight vary from what element zone you are in, but there is enough variation to keep things interesting. The game also chooses a random mini-boss after every level that must be defeated to progress. Overall, the combat is very satisfying and challenging. The game has a nice balance of feeling fair yet difficult. After a few runs in the dungeon, you discover what playstyle works for you, and also how the enemies attack and how to combat them. The game offers a ton of spells for you to explore and find what works best for you, as well as various items to enhance that playstyle a step further. For me, I found myself leaning towards lightning magic with a preference on spells with an AoE. There isn't really a story to Wizard of Legend, but maybe some minor lore that sets some pretext to the game. The lack of story doesn't really hurt this game though, as you just try to make it through the Chaos Trials. Overall, I gave gameplay and story a score of 9. Sound and music. I found the sounds in the game very satisfying. Enemies getting hit had the right amount of crunch, and the spell noises were simple but satisfying. Overall, the quality of the sounds were on point. I can't find anything to complain about. As for the music, every zone has its own soundtrack as well as the bosses. The soundtrack for the game features 14 songs. I found the music to be very fitting. Exciting music that felt right at home with the pixel style, almost reminiscent of a Pokemon battle music, with a fantasy boss fight taste to it. After doing quite a few runs, I could see the music becoming a little bland, but after 8 hours I still enjoyed it, although this game would be easy to play with your own music if you so pleased. Overall, I gave sound and music a 7.5. Price, replayability, and length. The game is offered on Steam for $16 and can be found for as low as $5 in G2A. Overall, if you enjoyed this genre, $16 is a fair enough price for this game, although if you can snag this game on sale or for $10 or lower, I would strongly recommend picking it up. The game offers a lot of replayability with various builds you can try with quite a few different enemy types. In a procedurally generated dungeon, each run feels slightly different, as well as random characters that can be found in the dungeon that offers different play experiences. It took me about 8 hours to beat the game for the first time, and even then I felt like trying out a different build to see if I could beat it again. There is also a hard mode I haven't yet to complete as of now, and I haven't tried co-op, which I'm sure would just offer more fun. Although the time it takes you to beat the game depends on your skill, the average on time to beat is 6 hours, and completion is to collect all the items and spells looks around to be 20 hours. That being said, I believe the game is still being updated with the air zone and boss being a recent addition, so more content may be released in the future. I will say once you learn the patterns of the enemies, the game becomes a little easier and predictable. Overall, I gave price, replayability, and length a score of 8. Recommendations. If you want another dungeon crawl game that offers a lot of variation and a similar level of difficulty, I would strongly recommend Enter the Gungeon, if you haven't tried this game already. They feel very similar, one game being about wizards casting magic and the other about a mercenary shooting tons of guns. If you find enjoyment in this game, I'm almost certain you will enjoy Enter the Gungeon. Another game with a more dark approach to the dungeon crawl would be Binding of Isaac. If you are looking for a dungeon crawl with a pixelated graphics, this might be a good choice for you, offering some nice variation and challenge. One that differs a little from these games that I would still recommend checking out would be Dead Cells. The game is a 2D game rather than an over-the-top, but the combat is still difficult and offers many ways to play. Overall, I give Wizard of Legend a score of 41.5 out of 50. Thanks everybody for watching. I'm your favorite uncle, HornyUncleNiner, and I will see you in the next one.